with Christian fundamentalism, and this was a big scandal with the thing that the Catholic Church went through, where they had these priests that were abusers that kept, when they would get in trouble for it, they would just ship them from church to church to church. In the American Protestant fundamentalist denominations, that's also a huge problem. That there are pastors who are known to be abusers of like young women in the youth group, and a huge part of it is like the purity culture for that for that community, is that what they do is they teach women that men are basically just like animals, that we can't control ourselves, that we're in, if I see like a collarbone or an ankle or something, and I'm left alone with you, it's not my fault what I do to you, because I was just driven so crazy. And that's what they teach them. And so,
if you ever heard the answer
yeah,
to the man bear question, I think a lot of
yeah,
people believe that.
yeah. Well, there's a lot of men that are raised this way, and they're told like, oh, well, that's
It's not your
just the
fault.
way. Yeah, it's not your
Yeah.
fault. That's just the way that you are. And then when you have a church that's based around that, that's sort of built around that,
Perpetuates it.
then when you have the youth pastor is, he's like 27 or 28 or something, and he gets caught abusing a 15, 16-year-old young woman, then they're going to say, well, what was she wearing? Was she left alone with him in a situation? It's clearly her fault. And a lot of times, and I know plenty of people who have been through this, where they were basically brought up in front of the church when they were 15 or 16 years old and made to apologize to their married
I have heard of that.
pastor
Yeah.
or youth pastor who abused them for tempting him and causing him to stumble. Like, that's a very
And
real thing that's happened to people that I know
a
personally.
lot.
It's awful.
It's
But
disgusting.
these very, like, the very extreme religious groups, a lot of them will have a culture that's based around that. And that's a huge problem as well. So a lot of people that do that sort of thing don't get caught, sadly. Like,
Gavi, I got to ask you at this point.
yeah,
It's dark, and you're right.
yeah.
And I need to know: are there any good cults? Like, are there any that do good? Like, they fit all four. They might even admit their cult, but are there like some that just do good with what they have?
Well, in order for something to be a cult, it has to be coercive. And so I would say no.
That's never good. Okay.
That's so it's the coercion that's the bad thing. It's like you can be in a situation where you can consent to somebody manipulating your thoughts and manipulating your emotions. And I would say
I deal with that with the relationship side of things. Like, some people want that.
yeah, some people want that, or even if you were talking about like psychotherapy, where you go into a room with somebody and part of the agreement is you're going to teach me how to think about these things differently and how to process my emotions differently than I'm doing right now, because what I'm doing right now doesn't work. But the difference between that and like a group that's doing that to you is that you are agreeing this is what I want to have happen. So,
Okay.
and a lot of
Yeah, it's
people
still
go through that voluntarily, and it can be helpful for them. But that's not a cult, because the real element there is consent and saying, yes, I want this. I recognize that I have a problem in my life that I could be doing better with, so I'm trying to get help with that, rather
guidance.
than,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times when cults are really recruiting people, who they will go after is they will go after for people who are otherwise vulnerable. So, like, say you were going through like a bad breakup or the death of a loved one, and you're like, what happened? What went wrong? Looking for a reason why that went wrong and why that happened is something that we do because as like a
We're
defense
human.
mechanism, so we can, we're
Yeah.
human, we want to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so we want to look for a reason why. And so a group that is very culty might look at somebody who feels like their life is not going right and wants to find a reason why, and they will say, here's the reason
Here's
why.
the reason why.
And
Well,
you, if you follow our roadmap of doing XYZ thing, it will be difficult to do all of these things, and you have to be really like militant about it, and you have to be very like strict with yourself about it and live by these rules.
right.
But you will, if you do XYZ thing, then you will get this result. And that's
Well,
how a lot of them recruit people.
yeah, the recruitment part is interesting in that I grew up studying comparative religions as a hobby. Joseph Campbell books, the whole thing. I
Oh
was one of
yeah.
those kids. And after my father died, uh, a certain members of a larger religion, well known by name to everybody around here, they started showing up about 3 months after my father died every weekend and just handing a pamphlet and talking to my mom. And I'm pretty sure that they just had the obituaries and they'd write down a name of a widower and then go visit her in 3 months when she's like at the peak of trying to rebuild and figure things out. And they came around for about a year and a half, fairly regularly, not every week, but yeah. And to me, it just smelled like recruitment. They had been looking at obituaries, and this was a planned thing.
That feels really predatory to me.
Yeah, it
I
could have
mean,
been
like,
coincidence. They just started showing up, but like never saw him before that. you know,
well, with the Christian fundamentalist groups like the ones that Sadie was raised in, a lot of the people that join them are people who say, like, you grew up and you had a very unstable home life. Say you grew up and you had parents who were either not around, or they were on drugs, or they just didn't do a good job of taking care of you. You still love them, but they didn't do a good job of taking care of you. And now you're in your 20s and you're thinking, how do I do things better for I because I want kids, I want to do things
for me
better.
and my future and my
Yeah.
kids. Yeah. How
Yeah.
do I not repeat?
Very natural thing, very reasonable thing. There's plenty of people that have advice for you, but if you've never seen that behavior modeled, then where do you go? Well, there's plenty of really extreme fundamentalist groups that will say, if you do XYZ thing, if you homeschool your kids and you do it this way and you put all of the effort into making everything perfect, then your kids' lives will be perfect. And they will get the upbringing that you never had, and they will have the stability, they will have the white picket fence, and they'll have this and that and the other thing. But it requires you to submit to your husband in XYZ way, to never question the authority of God or the church, and never question the authority of your husband over you. And if you model that behavior, then your children will have the perfect upbringing, and it will be difficult, but your children will have the perfect lives growing up. And then
Because
when they
you did
grow
the
up,
right
they'll,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, because you did the right thing, and this is what God wants for you. And there are plenty of groups that will tell you that.
And then
And
they got you and your kids eventually.
yeah, and well, your kids are going to be grown up with that,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are going to say, this was crazy. This was really traumatic for us. And they end up deconstructing. And then that relationship that you have with them might break down because you might feel that, oh, they're ungrateful for everything that you
Yeah.
sacrificed. Or you might get it into your head, oh, my kids are going to have the afterlife outcome that I don't want them to have. And, or it might be that you're part of a church where they're saying, if somebody isn't part of our church, then you need to be separated from them
Yep.
because they would be a bad
Isolation.
influence on you. It's the first rule of triage: save yourself first. So then you might end up with a situation where you're low contact or no contact with your own children, despite the fact that you did try to do everything right. And that's a situation that I've heard time and time and time again from people who are
That's
raised in really extreme fundamentalist or very extreme religious groups. And it's so sad.
yeah. I
Yeah.
had a gentleman over my house. He came with a friend, and the reason he started showing up suddenly with the friend is he had nobody left in his life because he was part of a church that he decided to leave,
Yeah.
and they cut him off. Everybody, his family, his
It's
friends,
awful.
his
It's really awful.
everybody, and
I mean,
he was still glad to be out of the church, but he did miss his friends, and he
oh,
was hurt. He never thought that they would be the people that cut him off because he never did it to others, like sort of thing.
it's the hardest thing to go through for so many people. I know so many people who like either uh they were raised in this group and they did everything right. And then they realized, oh, I'm gay. And they went and they talked to their pastor and they confessed to, and I'm using the biggest air quotes ever for people. Do you guys, you do video, but do you guys do audio too?
We just mostly video right now, but yeah.
Okay. Well, if you're listening to this, I'm doing the biggest air quotes ever. The sin of same sex attraction. Is what it is called, or they'll abbreviate it to SSA because they don't want to say it because it's like such a boogeyman. But they would go and they would confess that sin and basically just get ostracized from the community that they grew up in, and it's horrible. It's a horrible way to, it's the guilt and the shame and the fear that
Yeah.
you feel like you're doing something wrong. Or it would be somebody who would be in a relationship where they were being treated quite horribly, or they were being abused by a
Right.
partner. They would be in a domestic abuse situation, and they would make the, very courageous decision to get divorced and to, take the kids and go. And their church community would ostracize them because they don't believe in divorce. And they believe that you just have to stick it out and go to counseling and just do whatever you have to do,
Try
even if the
harder to
person
make
who
him
is, yeah,
happier.
yeah, to make him
Yeah.
happier, to not make him mad, even though, if he's going to abuse you, he's going to abuse you.
God
Like,
has all the answers.
I know, and you just have to like tough it out because that's what he wants from you. Like, I know women who were who they were praying for a Christian husband, but they were praying for a Christian husband who wouldn't hit them because they were told in church your husband might hit you and you just have to deal with it. That's like, I mean, it's such a horrible, like, very extreme religions like that. They can be so horrible and they can just treat people so badly. I mean, men can have it bad as well. Men can have these expectations that are put on them that they have to support a family and they have to keep having children that they really can't afford. And it's their job to be the only one who's working. Because their wife can't work because it's a sin
Work
for
hard
women
and
to work
provide.
outside. Yeah. So it's a sin for women to work outside of the home. And so you end up with men who are, they're working 3 jobs, they sleep 3 hours a night, and their lives are just awful. And they are just tired all the time and they're like,
They can't even enjoy the kids they have. They can't enjoy the
yeah,
wife. They can't, like, their life, their quality of life is gone in order to perpetuate a happy life that they're not having.
yes. Yes, but this is what God wants for you because
Yeah.
your children are like arrows, and happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. I believe is the Bible verse that they base that teaching on, that you should just have as many kids as possible. Some churches are like that. That's what the if you're familiar with the IBLP, the Quiverfull movement, the Duggars,
Yeah.
19
Not
kids and
familiar
counting.
on
That's what
that
they're
level,
about.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Hey,
that's what they're about.
about 30 years ago, there was a cult that was making the news, the Garbage Eaters.
I
You know of
haven't heard
them?
of these ones. No,
So
garbage eaters.
the thing was that they were people that they were isolationist in that if as soon as you joined them, you had to leave your family and everybody around you, and you traveled around and you basically ate out of the garbage. You were reclaiming things that other people were throwing away. That was part of what God wanted, and they were mysterious in that they didn't have a central meeting place, but they somehow all had the same literature. They would, like, there was handouts, and I just wondered if they were still around because I wondered how you could do it without a centralized meeting place. And they were, I know that they were national. Like they say, we found these guys in New York and these guys in Cleveland, these guys in LA. This is a garbage eater sign written on this. I just remember a while ago, and I wondered if they were still around.
I've never heard of these. That is, I'll have to look that up.
It's probably, they probably
I've
have a different name. They're like, no, we're the so and so's. Like, what are you calling us, the garbage? That's cool. That's
garbage
not
eaters.
cool.
Wow, I thought you were like 30 years ago. I thought you were going to ask about the Rajneeshis
I
out in
know that name
Oregon.
too. I knew the
Yeah,
moon story a little bit.
yeah.
Hmm.
No, the Rajneeshis were out in Oregon, and I remember because I grew up in Oregon. I grew up in Portland, and
Is that town that's still around that people say is like super chill and like everybody that's still there is friendly?
Yeah.
I saw
And they were all
YouTuber.
dressed in red. But back when the Rajneeshis were, when my parents first, I believe this was in like the 80s, but my parents first moved to the Portland area in like the late 80s, early 90s. And the thing about the Rajneeshis was that they were this cult that was based in Oregon, and they would get homeless people off the street and bring them out to their compound. And you had to dye all your clothes red. And so when my parents first moved to Portland, the neighbors were like, don't wear red or people will think you might be a Rajneeshi. Even though this was like a couple years after that whole thing kind of stopped being a thing.
And then the Crips moved into town and all hell broke loose. Sorry.
Yeah.
We can make that in a nice animated short.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Rajneeshis
got the
versus the
Rajneeshis.
Crips.
Garbage eaters. Hey,
What do we got? Tell
Jim
me about
Roberts
this.
Culture Eaters cult. Jim Roberts, really?
I
The
mean, I've
brother.
heard of people who are like, I know people who get really into like the subculture of, I mean, I'm from Oregon. I know a lot of hippies. I know people who are very much into the like leave nothing behind, like the leave no trace, almost like nothing from the earth or everything back to the earth kind of people.
Yeah.
And so I know people who are kind of into that subculture and who are like, who kind of take it kind of far, but that is different.
You can't shun laughter and play. I'm not down with it. You can eat all the garbage you want. I appreciate you saving it from the landfill, but sorry, Jim.
You do both of those things? Yeah, that's rough.
You got to do sustainability, man.
Eat garbage and be miserable.
Yeah.
My family lives in a pile of garbage. Sorry, it's a Whitest Kid You Know skit. That one of my favorites.
I mean, did you watch Trailer Park Boys?
I watched the first 8 seasons. I saw them live twice. And then after a certain point, I just had too much. I'm happy they're still going.
I was thinking about when Ricky's dad was living in the dump.
Oh, it's the way it goes, boys. It's the way it goes.
Way of the road.
Way of the road.
That's the way she
the
goes.
Piss jugs.
Yeah. I love the Trailer Park Boys. I think it's so funny. Rest in peace to John Dudsworth, Jim Leahy.
He was such an amazing actor, and when you find out, like, you know he's an actor and all that stuff was done sober, but then you see like watch some of his dramatic stuff sometime if you could find some clips of it. The dude was an amazing actor, and the stuff that he brought to there that he improv'd as well. Good job, Dunsworth. Like I think I stopped watching when he was gone because like he was a good percentage of why I liked the show.
I can't imagine watching that show without him. I just think it would have been different.
And Bubbles was supposed to be a throwaway character just for one episode, and Mike Smith was actually making fun of a childhood friend, and they're like, let's put him in. And
yeah,
without him, again, no show. Like that show hit so much good luck.
I remember the first one. I'm a huge Rush fan. Rush is like
of course you've seen all the Alex stuff. So
yeah, so I got into this show because I was really a fan of Rush, and I heard, there's an episode of the show Trailer Park Boys where they go to a Rush concert and they kidnap Alex, and I thought that was funny, and so I watched that episode. I said, this show is kind of funny, and then I watched it, and I thought it was really good.
Yeah, and he loved the show. That's why he agreed to do it. He's like, and he got involved in I think he is producer on one of the movies too, right?
I don't know, but that's fantastic.
I think he was. He was a fan of the show. That's how it all worked out. And like Mike Smith, I think Mike Smith played Bubbles. He was a huge fan of Rush. So like it was an actual love of Rush that you mentioned in an early episode, and that's why it came back. Have a great one. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Be safe out there. Treat each other well.